Everyone has had a nice start to your 2025. This is our first PO call of the year. What we're going to be talking about today, we have Dr. Lauren Oshman here, our program director. She wanted to introduce you to a diabetes remission grant that she's working on, and we wanted to get your input and thoughts about some components of this work. Then going to give you a really high level 2025 calendar overview with just some of our major dates so you know what to expect. We'll go over our agenda for the regional meetings as well as a slide that has those dates for you, though those holds have all been sent to your calendars. We'll introduce our plan for MCD2D site visits, talk about our PO small group calls, our annual report, and the report for the patient needs assessment. Lauren, do you want me to keep sharing my screen while you walk through your topics?
I would love that. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
So I am going to share an idea for a grant proposal and just ask for as much robust feedback as you're willing to offer to get your thoughts and ideas about whether this kind of proposal would be interesting to you and your practices. So that the working title of this grant is NADER, Navigation Assistance to Type 2 Diabetes Remission. And I'm working on this with my colleague, Dina Grausda. Next slide. So just to give a little bit of introduction about why we're interested in diabetes remission as we think about the goal of MCT2D, which really is a world in which we're preventing diabetes, but then helping people reverse diabetes through underused treatment options. We know that weight loss that's more robust, 10% or more, can lead to diabetes remission, which means your A1C is under 6.5 after you're stopping your glucose-lowering medications. And we know on the other hand that we have these new highly effective medications, semaglutide and tirzepatide, the GLP drugs, that can help reduce weight, but there are barriers, including their high costs, both to insurers and to patients, difficulty with adherence long-term, and frankly, not all of our patients want to be on medications long-term, right? I think the narrative we see of the medications being great versus patients wanting other options. And the other interventions that can help patients are underused. And in one study, like only 2% of our Medicare beneficiaries were even offered any of these options. And those barriers include the time and available training for primary care physicians, access to these resources in communities, coverage by our insurers, and the fact that it's really not a one-size-fits-all. Like you need to have someone help walk you through and pick a choice. And so the question this brings up for us is, could we provide something that's like a navigation approach that would help explain all these options to our patients, help them with shared decision-making and like engaging in treatment? And would this increase the number of patients in our practices who might engage then and then achieve diabetes remission? Next slide. So I made a very quick graphic to explain what the components of this intervention would be. And so the idea that it would be 3 components, that the patients who would be involved would have a visit with a care navigator. They would educate the patient and fill any gaps in their knowledge about these different weight loss interventions to achieve remission. They would do shared decision-making to help that patient choose. Patient could choose they don't want to do anything at all. It's totally understandable, but help them choose an intervention if they want to. And then help with follow-up. Are they like getting the right phone number or getting a referral from their doctor if needed to engage? And then finally, we're going to try to reduce the cost for the patients involved in this trial if it were eventually funded. So to try to reduce the out-of-pocket costs, because we know that insurance barriers and out-of-pocket coverage are a big barrier. The different interventions that we think will probably be involved in this trial would be something that's a very low-calorie meal replacement program. And in these studies, 46% of people who were involved achieved remission. Kind of a similar program, but on the very low carb slant, and patients could do whichever one they want. Bariatric surgery, which interesting to me is like not that much more or different in terms of those remission rates at 1 year with 50%. And then for patients who aren't quite ready for that intensive intervention, something that's an intensive lifestyle intervention, very similar to the diabetes prevention program, and about 12% of people receive or achieve remission. Next slide. And so what might be the benefit to a practice, physicians, and our patients and communities for something like this? Like all of the research proposals that we've brought to you through MCT2D, the PO and the practices get to decide to participate. This is not right for everybody, and so would certainly be absolutely optional. Practices be enrolled either in a control group or an experimental group. So half of the practices would go in one and half would go in the other. All of the practices would get some education. We want to make sure they understand a little bit about diabetes remission, but the study team would do the work. They would recruit the patients, collect all the data, and then provide the intervention. The only thing I think we would ask of the clinician is, I think the patients would need a referral to some of these interventions. And then like some of our prior work, if the patient then stops their medication, the trial team would convey that to the clinical team in the practice. Whether or not the patients are involved in the experimental or control group, they would all receive reduced cost. So that would be a benefit to the patients in the practice with either the control group or the experimental group. The big difference is that the navigator piece is the intervention, and the control group, those patients will just get a handout. They'll get like a lesser intervention about diabetes remission. And then just to ask the practices to do some evaluation afterwards, like, did they like it? What went well? What could we improve? The patients we would be looking for are people with kind of recently diagnosed type 2 diabetes within the last 8 years, and just that they would be willing to stop medications if their blood sugar is well controlled and they lose weight, and they would engage with us for 12 months. So part of the feedback I want is, did that explanation work? What did I leave out and what should I explain? So I'm going to move to the next slide and just ask for you to tell me, how willing would your practices be to participate in this kind of a proposed study? And we're going to launch a poll. And if you don't mind just giving me a not at all likely to extremely likely in your opinion, thinking about your practices, would they be willing to participate in something like this? And then Jackie, it's still showing me 0 of 1 answer. Do I have to answer this?
Showing up for you just as someone who joined this meeting, but don't worry, answers are coming in. We have 33 of 60, so we'll just give people a few more seconds and I will close it.
I'm never sure if I'm like the one holding it up. And then, as you finish responding, really the next question that I'm going to put in the next poll is a invitation to type in a suggestion you have, but I would also like very much appreciate if anyone wants to unmute and just provide feedback, suggestions, concerns, anything we could do to make this better. This proposal will be submitted in the spring, and then we wouldn't hear back about it until the late fall or winter. So all of this is kind of just helping prepare us to do the best job possible with the proposal.
All right, I'm going to end the poll and we'll share results.
So some moderately, some slightly, some not at all, and some very interested. Thank you so much. And then I'm going to close that and then just open it in question box. What suggestions do you have to make this more successful and appealing for those of you who said not at all or just a little bit or slightly? I think, like, frankly, some of our practices just aren't ready or willing or desiring to be involved in research, and we're not going to change that. That's a-okay. But any other suggestions you have? If anyone wants to come off mute, we can stop the screen share and then just offer any suggestions you want to give. Just raise your hand or unmute. So we'll give you a couple more seconds to respond. Jackie, I don't know if we want to kind of send out just a summary afterwards to ask for any other responses, but this is so helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had some submitted via the poll that we launched. So we'll leave that open for you to continue typing your answers there. We can't like pull and show those results immediately on Zoom. We have to like log in and do it on online. So we can share out a summary of what you all said. And then like we said, if you have anything you want to add, you can respond to that email and share it with us then, or anything that you think of later.
And then we'll move on with the rest of our presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much for joining, Dr. Ashman. We appreciate it. All right, I will reshare my screen. So now we're looking at our kind of major 2025 dates that have been defined so far. So as is standard, the specialist VBR year will begin on March 1st. There's nothing remaining for any of your specialists to complete between now and March 1st. As you know, all of those requirements have already been met and we're due primarily back in November and December. So we have 2 new endocrinology sites that have joined. We're working on getting them onboarded into the collaborative, but we'll have that VBR ready to share with you soon so that you know what the requirements are. We have our spring regional meetings that are taking place between April 8th and May 8th, and I have those on a later slide so that you can refer back to these and look at the dates for them all. We have our collaborative wide meeting that we are doing separately from Inhale this year, so that makes for a shorter day for you all. You're not driving in morning traffic and then trying to get home in rush hour traffic either. So we'll do it from 10 to 3 on a Thursday in June, still in Lansing, so that hopefully we can reduce drive time for people coming across the state. Then July 1st, all of our remaining PCP VBR requirements are due. So all of the learning community requirements, the A1C forms for your practices that were meeting the goal at the beginning of the year. And then with September 1st, we'll have our new PCP VBR year, and we'll be doing our regional meetings in fall virtually, and those dates are to be determined at this time. So for our spring regional meetings, just wanted to briefly give an overview of the agenda to you. So we continue to refine these agendas based off of what your clinical champions say they want to hear about and what is most useful for them from the meetings. One of the main things we always hear is just the beginning kind of updates on all of the changes with medications and CGM and, updates to guidelines, like that kind of clinical information is very helpful. So we've been opening our meetings with that, and we'll continue to do so at this meeting, where we'll have general collaborative updates and updates related to like the clinical quality initiatives. Another thing that has been particularly well reviewed and received from the practices have been presentations from specialists. We did this at last spring's regional meeting and got very good feedback on it, and we'll be doing it again for this spring's regional meetings, especially because we'll have endocrinology and nephrology in attendance as well. We've carved out more time for this so that there's more time for questions. We had a lot of questions and conversations from the specialists last year, so wanted to make sure that we were able to allocate appropriate time to that. And something that we're trying for the first time with these regional meetings is, while, we've had discussions at the tables with the attendees and have given specific things for them to work on and talk about, we wanted to do a little bit more of an informal, unstructured kind of networking component of these meetings, where people are getting up and getting out of their seats. We were going to share some posters, both that we've presented as MCD2D in the past and some potentially on the PCP specialist collaborations. More information on that to come once we define the details of that. But we're going to try this out and see how that goes, and hopefully respond to the requests that we've gotten from sites to incorporate this into what we're doing. And like I mentioned, these spring regional meeting holds have been sent out for some time, so these should all be on your calendars. They've also been sent to the new site clinical champions. So these are the 7 dates for the meetings. As always, the clinical champion can send a substitute attendee if they're not able to attend, as long as that person is a clinician as well. If it's easier to attend another meeting's date, for example, someone can't make the Livonia one but can do the Ann Arbor one, we can allow for that as well. We'll open up registration in early February for the sites to sign up and register for the meetings. We also wanted to let you know about something new that we're doing this year, and we're piloting this with a small group of sites for the spring regional meetings and hoping to expand this. But we wanted to come to the practices for the first time. So our coordinating center leadership, like our program directors, Dr. Ashman and Heidi Dees, and our program managers or staff will be coming to visit 4 sites across the spring regional meetings. This is in response to requests for more individualized support that we hear from the practices. We did our practice survey in spring 2024, and a lot of them were interested in participating in site visits. Participation in these is completely voluntary. It will be if your sites want us to come out and talk with them and meet with them, and those who do it, it will meet the practice level learning community requirement. We'll be working on like an interest form, and we'll be distributing that within the next month so that we can get these scheduled well in advance. We're planning for this first one to offer these in the 4 regions that we're traveling to, because our program directors and our team will already be traveling to these regions to begin with. Whereas in the fall, we'll likely offer site visits to the Southeast Michigan regions, since we are located in that area and we won't be traveling for meetings. So we're going to do 4 and just 4 site visits. So it's going to be 1 site per region. Like I said, we're kind of piloting this, trying it out for the first time and wanting to start small so we can learn from this. We're want to prioritize the need that they had to do this, hear about their, questions, concerns, their innovations, what they need from us. Participation, like I said, completely voluntary. It'll be based on availability and the site's interested in doing so. The time commitment will likely be 2 to 3 hours, though not all for one person. We're not saying like the clinical champion needs to set aside that amount of time. We'll likely meet with and talk to different people within the practice, and we're still working on like what that specific agenda will look like. Prior to the site visits, we'll work one-on-one with your clinical champions and practice representatives to create goals and an agenda for the visit so that we're making sure that it's as useful to them as possible. So more to come on this. Just wanted to give you a heads up prior to us beginning to send out interest forms and starting to schedule these. So we're really excited to do this. We're excited to meet more individually with the practices, and we want to build something here that's really useful and that we can do with more practices in the future. Another thing that we're going to be offering later this year too is a low carb diet workshop. So that same practice survey that I just referenced in regards to wanting site visits, we also asked about their interest in more intensive training for low carb diet, medication, CGM. And the one that got the highest number of responses was low carb diet. So 72% of your practices were interested in a more extensive training on that. So we're going to be offering a 5-hour training session that's over the course of 1 week, as well as activities that the attendees would be completing outside of these sessions. So we'll be doing both synchronous and asynchronous learning components to this workshop. We're going to be doing this with a small group of participants because we really want this to be collaborative, people to discuss and participate in breakout sessions on the meetings and like really engage with the other members of this. We'll be prioritizing people who can commit to all sessions, who champion low carbohydrate diet at their practices, as well as some other criteria like their level of baseline knowledge of low carb diet, what they're hoping to get out of the meetings, etc. We're also going to then bring this group back together on a quarterly basis so that they can kind of continue to support each other, learn from each other, work with us to develop any solutions to ongoing challenges that they're having. We're going to be hosting this Monday, May 12th to Friday, May 16th. It's going to be virtual, but we are going to have those sessions from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. every day. It's going to be led by Irina Hisamatsu, our dietitian, and other guest speakers. This also will meet the practice level learning community requirement. And if it's a physician that's attending for the practice, it will meet that physician's physician level learning community requirement as well. And we just think this will be a great opportunity to really dive a lot deeper. Low carbohydrate diet is the component of the program. We get the most requests for more information, the most requests for additional support and tools, etc. So we hope that by doing this, we're able to meet that. The way that we're structuring this is we have these 5 sessions. We're going to have an introduction to care team members and the foundations of low carb, how you're tailoring resources to meet patient needs. Then 2 sessions on challenges, one looking at patient-facing challenges, another looking at provider-facing challenges, and then that final session on Friday we'll be kind of putting together all that was learned and trying to apply that. So we hope that this meets the practices needs that they've identified around low-carb diet, and this will be something that we'll offer again more frequently in the future. We wanted to do this initial session, see what we learned from that, and then roll it out to the collaborative and future sessions as well. So next topic, on the PO scorecards, there's a component for our PO small group calls. So last year, what this requirement is kind of replacing is the one-on-one calls that you had with our coordinating center team, where we asked you about like your progress within the collaborative, where you've had successes, where you've had challenges, etc. Instead of continuing on with those one-on-one meetings, we decided that we wanted to keep that same, kind of small group support, because otherwise we have these calls that are very large. We have the collaborative wide meeting, which is everyone. So we wanted to have a structure where we're bringing together like 4 to 5 POs and having discussions like in that size group. So we tried to sort the group similar to how we did at the collaborative wide meeting, where we're grouping you with similar POs to the extent possible. So looking at, size, location, the structure. And then we're hoping to facilitate conversations between you all instead of, the conversations being MCT2D leading it, so that POs who have had success in areas where other POs may be having challenges can kind of share like what their approaches and solutions are. So these are some of the kind of things that we would have people share out and discuss at these meetings, and we'll likely refine this a little bit before the meetings occur. We're going to have participation from one member of the PO. You could, of course, have more people join, but we would ask that at minimum the PO admin lead, PO primary contact, or PO clinical champion attend. That will meet the scorecard requirement for this. We're working on developing polls that will ask for people's availability, and we'll be sending these out next week so that we can schedule these for February and March. So there'll be a 1-hour call, 4 to 5 other POs, and then one of our program directors will be on the call as well. And then either myself or Jake will be there too. So looking forward to learning from you all and the things that you've been able to accomplish and share with the other POs. Also, just wanted to give you a heads up that our 2024 annual report will be coming out soon. So our team has been working very, very hard on this over the last few months. We've been doing these since our first year as a program, where we kind of highlight everything that was accomplished by the collaborative in the last year, all the things that we've worked on together and what we've been able to do. So we'll be sending this out with our newsletter. So keep a lookout for this within the next few weeks. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to update everyone on, so this requirement applies only to the new practices, but all of the new practices that joined in 2024 were asked to have at least 10 patients complete our patient needs assessment by the end of, sorry, this should say 12/31/2024, by the end of last year. We've taken all of those results and compiled those, and either later this afternoon or tomorrow at the latest, we're going to be emailing a PDF of the results to each of the clinical champions at the new practices, and also posting the results on the admin portal for you to view as the PO. The report compares the practices responses on the patient needs assessment to the region as well as the collaborative. The version on the admin portal, we have either an HTML or a PDF. The HTML is interactive, so you can kind of click around on the graphs, so that should be interesting. And then the next step for that is that each practice is going to submit answers as part of just a reflection on the results of those patient needs assessments. So very, very short, we're just asking, how did they share the results with other clinicians in the practice? Did they send it via email? Did they have a meeting, etc.? What were the primary takeaways from the results of the patient needs assessment? Just kind of summarizing what they thought about their results, what they learned from it, and how they'll apply the learnings from the patient needs assessment to improve diabetes care within the practice. So the form is very, very short, and that'll be due on February 3rd. It's available on the admin portal. It's linked in the PDF and in the emails that we're sending. And we'll also make sure to send reminders out on that as we get closer to the due date for practices that we are still waiting on a response from. With that, before we hand it over to Inhale, does anyone have any questions or anything they would like to bring up?
I do. This is Blair from Bronson. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Hi, Blair.
Hi. Just a clarification on the scorecard, we have to access the data portal. I think it's 2 times in 2 different quarters. but then I look at the PCP VBR requirements on the website that I've been having my providers go to. And it also says that that counts, or something similar like that counts for practice level VBR requirement. Can you clarify that?
Yep. So one of the things that we wanted to do as part of this initial performance measure was to make sure that everyone is familiar with the dashboard, is using it, is knows how to like get to where they want to go, etc. We wanted to require it for the POs, and this is something that Blue Cross Blue Shield wanted to as well, to make sure that as we enter into more performance VBR, that everyone is using that actively, since that's where we're calculating and tracking those things. We didn't want to require it for the practices because we felt like that was a big ask, especially since each PO is kind of handling that differently. I know some POs are like, no, we're not going to have the practices access it. We'll look at reports and tell them what they need to know, etc. But we do have it as an option as the practice level learning community VBR, because we do acknowledge that there are some practices that maybe are really interested in that, want to use the dashboard more, etc. So it's a requirement for the POs on the scorecard, and it is an option for practices. Does that clarify?
It does. So I think I'm the only one that has access to our data portal, and I handle it for our PO. Would I get credit at the practice level then, or no?
No, it would only be at the PO level.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yep. And for those who have done that as, or who have had practices do that as their way to meet that practice level learning community requirement, that is not yet reflected in the admin portal. So your practices may have logged in twice, but you'll see that they don't have credit for it yet. We're working on, we wanted to like give some time, and we're now going to update it on a monthly basis. We're going to update it for the first time in January. So I can't say offhand how many practices have done it, but there's a good number of handful where practices have used that as their way to meet the requirement. You should, by the end of the month, see that reflected, and then we'll be updating it monthly between now and July. And I see, Carrie, you had a question in the chat. Is there a way to get the summary measures tab into the same exported document as the expanded practices level detail? You can expand each section and pull the graph so it doesn't include the summary at the top. I don't know offhand. Let us look into that, and we'll follow up with you with instructions if that is possible to do via email. Any other questions before we hand over to Inhale? Okay, Brenna, over to you.